Welcome to the United States of America podcast. Oh, it has been a crazy, crazy week, and I just want to welcome everyone. I'm your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all the nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a promotional channel, and we are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you, and we are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting in the comments section. Please be kind and self-govern. And if you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. I'm joined on air with Greg Clarkson, regenerative farmer, and an ASN on Kansas. And now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Gregory.
Good morning. Good dawning.
Good dawning. Good dawning. So Anna has been working tirelessly for what, 2-3 nights now? What is it, 5? I don't think Anna sleeps, y'all. I don't think Anna sleeps. Anna, today I wanted to start with, North Carolina's experience with HARP's Hurricane Helene and our lack of our General Assembly, our assembly here. We don't have a formidable militia. And so we're experiencing the side effects of not, being as organized as we would like to be. And, I spoke at length with Joe Hayes yesterday. And I just want to talk about the peacekeeping task force and really, let all the 50 states out there know that you don't want to be caught like we have been, where it's basically too little, too late over here. And actually get in touch with touch with Joe and the peacekeeping task force. They really can help all the 50 states develop sound, formidable, organized militias to serve, people in the times of these are what seems to be natural disasters. This is 1,000,000% man-made. Everyone should know that. It's a completely unnatural disaster that comes with this weather warfare that we're constantly suffering at the hands of the corporatocracy, who are constantly waging war against us. And the assembly should have a PKTF liaison who brings back powerful knowledge to share with each state assembly and the appropriate committees. And everyone's provisions committee on their militia should invite the PKTF in for teachings, as well as every state assembly's outreach committee. And for the newer assemblies, there's a fantastic new ombudsman service being offered to all 50 states by the PKTF, which can really help ensure that those assemblies can more powerfully learn the art of self-governance and avoid devastating conflicts on the assemblies that are hindering the assembling efforts. And, I really appreciated the time that Joe Hayes made to speak with me. And, we were just discussing, like, what can we do to help North Carolinians. The death tolls are starting to come out now. And, we're still missing 11 people on our assembly that we have no way to contact. I know we have a lot of folks here. We were fortunately, unscathed in the Piedmont region. We got a lot of rain, but even the winds didn't come here. It seems like they were really targeting the Western region. I don't know if you have any information on any of that, Anna, as to their strategies for these vermin.
Well,
I don't know.
I can tell you that we're down to 8 people missing.
And
isn't it a wonderful thing that we have people that are watching? A lot of these situations, nobody's watching who went where or why. And, here we are, we're tracking our people, we're searching for our people, and, we're trying our best to help our people and to find out, their situation and, what we can do to get relief to them. So, it's a lot better when you're together than when you're alone. And I think it's a wonderful thing that the assembly is there and that they're able to do this kind of work, and that they are willing to make that effort. North Carolina has certainly already mounted quite a response to the situation, and I think that the other states are more or less following suit. Some of the other states in the surrounding area that was affected have better organized militias earlier, and they are benefited from that. But all of them have their access to the PKTF. And of course, the PKTF's primary role here is to assist in networking solutions when something like this, it's not just your area that's affected, and it's not just your little assembly militia that is left struggling with it. The rest of the entire country can be mobilized to help. And so that is the role of PKTF, is to bring in more resources and keep those communications flowing and keep everybody moving toward common goals, so that we can actually have a major impact on the end result. So we're beginning to see the payoff of being organized. We're beginning to see the results of making those efforts during the good times, so that now when the bad times arrive, we have an answer or answers. So I'm very proud of everybody. I'm proud of the assemblies that have already been able to collect themselves and get on the ground. I'm proud of Joe Hayes and the PKTF, because this is exactly what they were born for, and here they are. So we have quite a few boots on the ground this morning. We have efforts coming in from the western side of the disaster area that was not affected, that are acting as staging areas, staging grounds, to get heavy equipment in and get manpower and resources focused on the hardest hit. My middle son lives in Greenville, Tennessee, and he was 20 miles away when he was 20 miles away on the east side when the storm hit, and he had to travel 150 miles through back roads to get back to Greenville.
Wow!
Had to go all the way north and loop all the way over and then come back down. So it was a 17-hour ordeal, but he made it. And fortunately for him, Greenville was only secondarily hit. They lost their water purification plant, so they're having to truck water in. But they survived it pretty well and are serving as a staging ground for relief efforts going into North Carolina and easternmost Tennessee, which were both very hard hit in that area. The city of Asheville, North Carolina, has been isolated now for several days. They are beginning those emergency evacuations by helicopter and emergency supplies by helicopter, but that isn't enough. Obviously, the people there are isolated. They must be very scared. I haven't heard yet that they have been able to establish communications in Asheville.
I know their cell towers are up now.
They are?
Yeah.
Good.
Because we're getting messages.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, I know everybody was working on this. They even had paratroopers going into the area because there was um, no communication and no way to get assistance to people that were having medical crisis in the middle of all this.
Right.
We,
Bridges and roads were all flooded and washed out. Chimney Rock's gone.
yeah,
It's just it's nuts. Boone and Asheville. So everything between Boone and Asheville were super hard hit. And so we have family in Black Mountain. They were very hard hit. Their roads literally are just gone. Um, and so many because of the mudslides, a lot of these roads just like fell through. So there's gaping holes. And also there's just big trees down. We have friends in Morganton who they can't get home. And there's crews with chainsaws that are trying to cut paths because so many trees are down across the roads, and they're trying to just make holes that cars can fit through. But the semis actually need to get through there, and that's what's going on. I mean, that's a bigger problem. And then they don't want to take semis up there
right.
unless they know that there's a solid road. And so they're doing some recon, at least from people who I know that are in some of these areas. And then we've got folks here that have ATVs and, chainsaws and things ready because they're ready to roll out to go to try to support. But we're trying to find out which way to go. So that's kind of a different issue altogether.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to build up these relationships with like the Department of Transportation so that you get the latest postings on which bridges are safe and which roads have been restored.
Sure.
And they are the source of information for all that. So we need to be working with DOT on that kind of information and getting it out to the people and having safe roads. My son wouldn't have been able to get back to his home in Greenville except for 2 county sheriffs and a squad car of state troopers. They
Right.
knew the back roads, and then they
Mhm.
were, telling people, you can route through up in here. And
Mhm.
so, thankfully, my son got involved in a little cavalcade of caravan of people that were following these directions and finally snaked their way back home to the western side of the state. But
Yeah. This is another reason, friends, why it's important to invite the PKTF in because they actually help to coach us on how to develop these relationships, how to have these communications in place, things that like civilians wouldn't otherwise think of on their own. So this is a very valuable resource. And so, please take a moment and go to the PKTF website and like message Joe and get on their schedule and get them talking to your committee members and the committees can reach out to the PKTF on their own. This doesn't require, like coordinators or anybody to get involved. And you can just invite them into your committee meetings so that you can get the information and then report it back to your assembly when you do your reports. So,
right, and this is a federation level activity, so it can span many states.
mm-hmm.
And once that network gets activated, then you're beginning to call on the resources of all the states around you.
Right.
And then they're reaching out to their communities and funneling more assistance. Now,
Way more secure than these centralized systems, way more secure and way more reliable than just the big centralized systems.
right. Our experience with FEMA in an actual disaster situation is that everybody's dead before they get there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, having that local self-reliant, radically self-reliant group already well established is really, really powerful. And I think that it's fantastic that the PKTF is now developed. I mean, it's been cool to watch them too, like get their ducks in a row and really get organized. So this is fantastic news for everybody.
Yeah, well, that kind of prior planning will pay off in a situation like this. And this is exactly why we need our militias. You'll
Yes.
notice that the National Guard is absent. Where is the National Guard of the state?
Yeah.
The
Right.
National Guard of the state is supposed to be when we're talking about jurisdiction, the state
Mhm.
is a nation. It's a nation state, and its National Guard should be at home in a situation like this, and it should be deployed for the
Yep.
assistance of the people. The National Guard supposedly grew out of the territorial militia that grew up after Lincoln.
Mm.
But where are they? Anybody seen any National Guard units deployed? Any mobile kitchens? Any emergency tent villages springing up? Any latrine services opening? Where are
No. They just want to police everybody more powerfully. They just want to bring in tanks and scare people more. There's no actual relief. And this is really the problem, you guys, is that, there should be relief. Speaking of relief, Anna gave us a lot of great news yesterday. I know Gregory is chomping at the bit with questions for you. The men have questions, Anna. What you got, Gregory? Oh, you're muted.
Let's try that.
they?
So I really enjoyed the information last night, and who knows what today is going to bring, but it got me thinking ahead to, GFG, the banking system. So I went back through the information again this morning, and I have created a vendor account for my farm. I've had that for quite some time,
Good,
and
good.
it got me thinking. The more, like in my case, the more farmers that can get into that vendor account, get their status corrected, get their vendor account set up. Farmers do a lot of farmer to farmer trade. And that would be an ideal situation, to trade from vendor account to vendor account. And so I was just kind of curious where we might be with that being live. Is that something that is in the near future?
Oh, yes. We have 50 bank services we call them prosperity unions.
Okay.
So they are in one jurisdiction, and then we have the AFD accounts that you're familiar with in the asset-backed system. So all of that's coming together right now. Day before yesterday, saw the listing of the 50 prosperity unions. There was one in every state, which is very encouraging. They are putting together the ability to be able to trade in Bitcoin and various other kinds of, digital currencies if you're into that. And they're also putting together the ability to reach the territorial population and the fiat system through the credit unions. Now, I expect that there's going to be a tremendous changeover here as they start introducing what they're calling the US note, the USN instead of the USD, okay, or the FRN. The problem with the USN is that it's based on the same basic system. It's based on the same association of, okay, we've got their assets cashiered over here and we're going to borrow against their assets and owe them a debt. And then we're going to charge them for the interest that accrues on that debt that we owe them and go bankrupt and cast all of our collective debt and the interest off on the people. And just this past week, if you've been watching, the people raised their hand and said, no, we're collecting all the USNs as debt immediately. We're collecting at the source. and we're not going to pay any gratuitous debt. The bankers aren't going to have this, fat income stream from a debt that isn't a debt, that isn't even, shouldn't even exist, because our people should be in charge of their money, right? We don't need them to play nanny for us and tell us that we can't spend our money ourselves. We don't need their Congress dipping into our pockets. And we certainly don't need to be paying interest on something that is unnecessary. Now, so
I was curious with the USN and the changes that are imminent here, maybe today. Where do credit unions, the traditional credit union, fall into that? Because banks, FDIC, that's Federal Reserve, that's private. Credit unions are tied to the U.S. Treasury, but they are different in the structure, and they're typically community based. You typically have to have some sort of a tie, to become a member of a credit union. So I didn't know where that might fall into all of this.
Well, it's a new kind of credit union. That's why we're calling it a prosperity union. Those who are still in federal service, say the military and any public civil servants, would be able to borrow against money that they're owed. Okay, so they would have a traditional kind of credit service such as we are familiar with now, except that they'd be able to borrow against their own assets and pay themselves back, which is a whole different sort of thing than they're presently stuck with. The other side of it, those who are claiming their birthright status, will be getting prepaid credit. And the prepaid credit is a result of restitution and recoupment.
Yeah.
Oh, just a second. I've got a good example of this.
Okay.
All right, hold on.
I thought this question was in line with where you're going. This person's asking, will we be getting prosperity cards, or will it be a credential card offered by GFG? Look at that. Nice.
Good.
Okay, and on the back,
it's got your QR code.
Yes, we have the QR code.
Very good.
And so each one of us will have our own QR code. Oh, just a second. I have to take this.
Yeah, go ahead, Anna. We can mute you. This is cool.
Yeah, very good.
Oops.
There you go.
Whoopsies. I was trying to take her down for a second. There we go. Anyway, when she's done with her call, we can get back to that.
It's exciting to hear about the 50 prosperity unions, one in every state. That's very exciting.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
And it will be really exciting to get this AFD and this whole structure in place to do, like I said, vendor to vendor transactions, and then vendor to consumer as well.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah,
all right,
sorry
Anna.
about that, guys. That was one of ours calling in from the disaster area, letting me know he's alive.
Yes.
Very good.
Excellent.
At the same time that we have assembly members in the affected states, we also have federation workers in all the affected states. So we have our own little rescue operation going on at the federation level too. So thank God another one returned and back in
communication.
Yep. Made it through the storm. I don't know how many of his animals perished yet, but we'll find out. Yeah, it's really hard. A lot of the farmers are reporting devastating losses of livestock and farm crops just at harvest time. And it's
that wasn't planned at all, was it?
Well, on the subject of planning, people point at HARP, the High Altitude Oral Research Project. That's actually very old. HARP started in the 80s, and it started, High Altitude Atmospheric Research Program. This was in 1987 when it started, and it was started by one of the oil companies here in Alaska.
Mm.
It was research that they had been asked to undertake by President Reagan as part of his Star Wars initiative. For those of you who are old enough to remember that. A oil company here in Alaska, Arco, Alaska, began a research project, and it was run by a man named Bernard Eastland.
Hmm.
And Bernard Eastland was an absolutely scary smart engineer. And so he began playing with, antenna arrays and what they could do in terms of bouncing energy off of the high altitude, high energy Van Allen belt in the in the atmosphere. So this is all about what you can do when you put energy into different layers of the atmosphere. And this is, HARP was the result. And as a spin-off from HARP, then we got over the horizon radar that can track an ICBM coming toward our country. It works like a mirror in the sky so that you can see what's coming at you from over the horizon. And that's a very neat trick, and it's very useful. And from a defense industry standpoint, it's something that is crucial to being able to be prepared for a nuclear attack or any conventional attack. There won't be any more Japanese surprises, for example, like World War II with the attack on Pearl Harbor, because days in advance you know what's going on the other side of the world, and it's because of the over the horizon radar that's possible by doing this. Unfortunately, HARP also pokes holes in the atmosphere, and it's not really it's not an up-to-date technology anymore. So now it's being run by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they have very limited projects that make use of HARP. So it's not HARP that you have to worry about, and it's not HARP that's causing the problems with the various kinds of technology we're seeing now. After HARP, Bernard Eastland went on and founded a company called Eastland Research, or just simply Eastland Corp. Okay. And they were the ones that developed all these scalar weapons and all the basics of the scalar weaponry that we see deployed now. And scalar weapons can come in a wide variety of different kinds, but the ones that are most devastating in general are called SIPA units. And they're just these kind of black box units that they can pack up on a submarine or on a ship and transport all over the world and coordinate and triangulate on a specific area. And they can send pulses of energy into that area and basically do what's called slice and dice. And anything within the coordinates that are triangulated from 3 different locations of these SIPA units dies, because it interrupts the biological system. It interferes with the heartbeat, so that the electrical impulse of the heartbeat is interrupted. And so basically you have mass heart attacks in that specific area. And it's very devastating. That's where you're seeing all of these peculiar die-offs. All of a sudden the birds just drop out of the sky. all of
The
a sudden,
frequencies. Yeah, the frequencies that they blast out.
all the turtles die, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not because of pollution, it's because they're testing out these horrible slice and dice weapons. They also have movable units that are generating ultra low and extremely low pulses of
Mhm.
energy that are exciting the Earth's crust and the earthquake subduction zones. So that's how they can create earthquakes. That's how they can stimulate uh, a volcano to erupt.
Or tsunamis.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And so in this most recent case, what we see is that the radar returns what's called a popcorn signature. And if you look up the entire East Coast, you see all these 5G towers going off sequentially.
Mhm.
And they have a particular little um, lumpy signature on the radar that's called a popcorn signature because it looks a little bit like a kernel of popcorn erupting out from the tower. And we see that all the way up from Florida all the way to Virginia with a defined pattern that follows the storm. Now, this seems to indicate that they were using some sort of technology to drive the storm
Mhm.
and hold it. You've seen the weird stuff that's gone on, like when they flooded out Houston, and they just left that grid there for days. You know, that's the kind of thing that can happen. But now these are all land-based towers,
It
Yep.
looks something like this.
right?
Yep.
They're all land-based. So
Yeah.
efforts to say that the Russians did this by broadcasting from their movable ship version of this that's based in Cuba. No, it didn't come from the Russians. It was not a seaborne attack. It was something coming directly from the land
Mhm.
based towers. So,
Yeah.
yes,
And I think that vibration's affected with all the metal they spray into the sky too, Anna. It's the metal and then because they're spraying layers like at least over here we have clouds all the way down to the ground right now.
well, the primary purpose of the chemtrails, other than getting rid of an industrial byproduct, a noxious industrial byproduct that they'd all otherwise have to pay to get rid of, and instead now can get paid for as a product, right?
Mhm.
Um, is that when they spray this on the ground, it becomes highly incendiary.
Yeah.
And so they're basically taking the guts out of an incendiary bomb and spraying it in a thin layer all over the landscape, so that if a fire gets started, it has explosive force.
Right.
This is where you're getting the kinds of fires that you saw in Paradise, California.
Yep.
This is
Yeah.
where you're getting these things where the trees are first they're hit with a laser, a dew weapon that burns them from the inside out,
Right.
sort of like a microwave.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So they hit a tree and it's burning from the inside out, and then it hits that layer of incendiary material and it just goes boom like a bomb. And so that's they're basically improving upon um, their firebomb capability. Incendiary bombs have been very, very popular with the military ever since the Vietnam era and napalm. They have perfected their ability to firebomb anywhere they want to firebomb by all this chemtrail spraying. And of course, it's affected our food and our our water, and everything.
And our bodies, Anna, because it's metal, and so they're um, amplifying these electrical surges, which is literally creating microwave. You know that the radiation that they as they turn the grid up and down, the radiation that comes from that really that the side effects of that radiation poisoning, that's the same symptoms as the convid, you know I mean,
COVID.
it's the same thing. It is literally radiation poisoning, which can be remediated with iodine and many other things. So this isn't. Also, not to mention the dipsticks into the ocean. They create a hot spot, and
Mhm.
that creates that atmospheric heat is now creating a dipstick into the ocean and swirling it. I mean, they're using this multiple ways, and it's all about electricity because we're all electrical beings. It's affecting us as a side effect of that because
Right.
we're not biological, we're electrical.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah. Well, the weird thing is that now that they've developed these weapons and they're deploying them, they're testing them against domestic populations.
right.
And that's their excuse, is that, but from our perspective, they may be targeting their own populations, but what about the rest of us?
Right.
What about those of us who aren't U.S. citizens? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so my complaint to the UN has often been, okay, well, under the NMOD treaties, they can test on their domestic populations. And I hope that doesn't give anyone in the services any warm fuzzies, because they've written this into a lot of treaties where they can conduct experimentation of new weapons on their domestic population. That means you, military. And so part of our complaint to the UN has always been that they are testing on our population at the same time they're testing on their population, and we didn't sign up for this, so it becomes in some cases an act of genocide where people are actually dying as a result of their on the ground experiments. And so I have been complaining on an ongoing basis with the UN, but the UN is a particularly useless organization. And part of it is that it's underfunded. We don't realize this, but the UN only has like I don't know, what is it, $5 billion total budget? And, for the scope of the work that they've undertaken, that's peanuts. So they're grossly underfunded for the quota mission that they've got. But they make it worse on themselves by not having a coherent and fair um, policy toward much of anything. For example, for the last, well, ever since the Second World War, the Security Council has had 5 to 7 members, depending. They've expanded a little, but there's nobody on the Security Council from Africa. And
Hmm.
Africa is unimaginably huge. I mean, we get a distorted view of Africa from looking at our globes and our maps. Africa should actually appear to be like 3 times the size that it already is. It's huge. It's much, much, much bigger than what they portray on the maps and globes.
Mm-hmm. They just
And,
want us to believe whatever they put on the maps. I mean, how is any of it really believable, actually?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the big problem for me is that you've got hundreds of millions of people in Africa, and they're just being treated like animals. They're being treated like they don't count. They don't have a voice. And so the BRICS countries just recently this week said, well, we're going to leave the UN because it doesn't actually represent all the countries that it's supposed to be representing, and it's ineffective. Well, I would have to agree that it's ineffective in that it's been commandeered for evil purposes and hasn't properly resisted that manipulation. by the G7 countries.
Hmm. We
I
have a
got
lot of questions here.
I got one more question, business related, Niti, if I may.
Absolutely.
Indemnification, and indemnification is always a big subject, in business. And with the GFG, we would have the Federation deposit indemnity bond.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's the purpose of that is 100% indemnification of as a vendor.
Of the states and their business.
Okay.
Now, indemnification is the same as insurance,
Yep.
only it's at a public level, and it's to ensure that we can conduct business without. It's sort of like posting a bond in order to conduct business, so that you're
Right.
insured and the state is insured.
Right.
Um, so that's why we did that.
Okay.
The uh, it doesn't replace the kind of private insurance that people have on their car, for example. Um, but that whole industry has been screwed up too, because there hasn't been a proper understanding of commerce versus of commerce. You see, there are two kinds of commerce. There's commerce on the land and there's commerce on the sea.
Right.
And so you'll see that there are actually, we call it a bilateral system, but maybe we should have called it a trilateral system, because we not only have banks that are in the business of dealing with physical assets, the international trade banks, but we also have banks that are involved in commerce in both the land and sea. And so you have a bank of commerce. Notice that little word "of" in there. You have a bank of commerce, which is a maritime jurisdiction bank. And then you have a commercial bank, which is a land jurisdiction bank function. So we've got all three kinds of institutions. Plus we have the credit unions, or as we're calling them, prosperity unions, because our prosperity unions will be able to issue prepaid credit.
Yeah. Okay. So when you were talking about commerce and trade, so unincorporated GFG vendor account, that's an unincorporated de jure jurisdictional account. Therefore, you're conducting trade because there's no corporation, there's no incorporation involved.
Well, right, and the way that you can tell the difference is that the current accounts that are open in GFG are all trading AFD, which is a gold-backed, asset-backed currency. And so that, by definition, is in the realm of international trade. Technically, BRICS is nothing but an association of international trade banks. It's not. It's running competition against the commercial banks, which deal in things like stocks and bonds and certificates and securitized assets and all of that kind of stuff that they have, notes, promissory notes, all that stuff is in the commercial realm. And so you have commercial banks that deal with that, and you have trade banks that deal with physical asset deposits.
Okay. Last thing that I want to just a quick follow up on the prosperity unions. You mentioned 50 of them, one in each state. I'm just curious, how would I reach out to that union, or when could I reach out to that union in Kansas for my case?
Well, there's a master list that's going to be published, and it lists all 50 states, and then it gives you the access address to go to.
Okay.
Where you can access them online. And those prosperity unions are going to be terrific in terms of being able to distribute back prepaid credit and being able to do the kinds of loans that people are used to a certain extent, and that they will actually loan credit to territorial citizens.
Yeah. Okay, great.
As well as
Niti,
us. Is that what you mean?
you have some questions, so apologize for carrying on.
No, this is all important. Like, look, well, Greg and I were talking before the show, and we were just like, there's so many things to talk about, and we want to
Yeah.
make sure that we also honor everybody's questions as well. So, I think this is a good one. Sean's asking, how would someone open an unincorporated gunsmith shop and not have to deal with the ATF contract government nonsense?
They don't have any authority if you're just producing your guns in state and selling them in state.
So they have to work with a manufacturer.
Well, the actual thing is that they have control of interstate manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Which we have arms. We don't have firearms.
Right. Firearms, technically, firearms means things like howitzers and cannons. Okay, it's not talking about your squirrel rifle. So on those counts, you're automatically set free as a gunsmith, a private gunsmith who's, just fixing guns and building guns in your community. If you're not shipping your guns across state lines, they don't have a word to say to you.
If he's servicing for Americans who might be seeking a gunsmith and then that crosses state lines, that's a problem. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, well, if they have to transport guns across state lines, that can be a problem.
But if the owner of the gun transports the gun back and forth themselves,
right. Yes, that's not
that's the way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of the ways. The other thing is to sell your guns through a gun shop. If you need to, if you have a customer in,
another state,
and you need to get that gun to them, well, and you have to send it across state lines, and you have to freight it, you have to ship it, then you need someone with a federal firearms license to do it for you. But you can do that for a reasonably small fee just by going to a local gun shop that is licensed to do that. And what they do is they package it all up nicely and put all the right stickers and whatnot on it. And then they ship it to another licensed gun shop near to the location that you want to send it. And then the owner, the person that you're trying to send it to, goes to that gun shop and picks it up.
Mm-hmm. Sean, these are the logistical, these nuanced details that we're talking about in our business meetings on the Saturday calls. So go to our link if you want to become a business member, and we're talking about these kind of things because it's the same kind of challenges for farmers, believe it or not. All of these questions that you have. And then the best part is we get to ask Anna if we ever really are stumped, and she's gracious and answers.
So the ideal situation is as the prosperity unions get stood up.
Yeah.
I would go set up a vendor account on GFG.
Well, first you want to make sure you're declared, you have your everything. So
yeah.
This is for declared Americans. And obviously we're on YouTube talking to all of YouTube land. So if you're not a declared American, none of this applies to you at all. But if you are a declared American, then, and also they can all come to the meetings and learn. And we do kind of qualify everyone and make sure, because we don't want anyone to be harmed and, that kind of thing. Right. So
it's a learning curve because you're learning to operate in a new jurisdiction
lawfully and not legally. We're operating lawfully, which stands over legally. So also not a question, but Greg, your wife's beautiful quilts Tess is
Yep.
admiring them. Yes, those
So
are Gregory's wife is an incredible quilt maker, and that is her handiwork in the background. Just so you know.
she's probably over 100 plus quilts at this point. She's
Wow.
got her own quilt shop. So if anybody wants a quilt, it may be a 10-year waiting list, but she can get you a quilt.
I have a special order that I would like to make if she's interested in that.
I want one with buffaloes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to make note of that.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Um, Pat Brown is saying, it appears that our coordinator left for vacation Friday, has canceled assembly meetings. Is our state's in dire need of a meeting? Can we meet without the coordinator?
Yes, of course you can. But my understanding is that this was a long planned vacation type thing, and it's a cruise, so he'll be out of contact. I'm assuming you're talking about North Carolina.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's what this is, but I'm just letting you know.
I don't know either, but I'm
Oh,
assuming because I heard that the assembly business has been canceled for 2 weeks. You don't have to wait on a coordinator. A coordinator is a go-between between the federation and the assembly. And especially right now, when you have an emergency situation, you shouldn't be sitting around waiting on a coordinator. You can pull together your safety committee or your community committees and operate in the meantime. It's ridiculous. You shouldn't be sitting on your thumbs waiting to respond to an emergency just because one person is gone, and that one person is the go-between between the federation and the assembly. The assembly can communicate with its own mouth directly to the federation if it needs to.
Right.
The coordinator position is there to help you get organized. It's not there to dictate. And it's a lot of the misunderstandings that we have are based on assumptions of CEO type executive power. People assume that the coordinator is an executive officer in the sense that they're used to in the nanny state government. And that's not true. So if your coordinator is not there, then by all means, raise your hand, get in touch. In the areas that have been devastated by this storm, you need to be getting your committees together and working to help each other as much as possible. And you can get in contact with me directly simply by doing things like this. And many of you have the PKTF numbers. The federation is there. You just need to reach out and get the help you need.
Perfect. And Altered Heart is saying, Cynthia in Illinois, how do I connect local sustainable Illinoisians with farmers to you and Gregory? Yes. So we have a link in all the show notes, Cynthia, and please go to that link and join the farmer and the business meetings that we're doing on Saturdays. And you just can sign up for the mailing list. Please do it.
Yeah,
All the business.
nationwide.
Yeah,
that's
all the
nationwide.
business owners, all the farmers, just go there. There's a link to get on the newsletter, and that will give you the invitation for the Saturday Zoom calls. Birthright status, is that those who have direct lineage to family here before 1775? Anna, do you comprehend this? What are they saying? Birthright status.
Yeah, most of us have a birthright status that is prior to 1775. Even my relatives made it here before the revolution. Many of them. Some of them just are fairly recent from prior to World War I, but some, virtually everybody here has relatives that went back before 1775.
But just because we didn't, because if our folks just migrated here, then
the reason it's important that you have people that were here before the revolution and people that were here before the Civil War is that you have land claims and
yes.
you have the state claims go back before that. Otherwise, it's not important in terms of your political status. If you were born here, you were born here.
Right. Correct. And Robert Anderson, how do we get new credential cards with it? So there's a list of that. You go onto the TASA website and you place your order. You go to your coordinators on your state, and you're ordering them through your LRO.
Actually, Niti, no.
Oh.
No, this is a separate card. This is a card that's issued by the bank.
You're talking about the prosperity card?
Right, I believe, yeah. The state credential cards are different. The state credential cards are a viable international photo ID, very handy to have, and they will come in handy in different venues. But in terms of getting your QRC code, what I was showing you here today this is issued by the banks.
So that's the prosperity card.
Right. This is the prosperity card.
Okay.
This is what you will use when you go to a vendor and you want to make a purchase.
Nice.
Well, then you'll flip this over, and this is over here. I'm getting my mirroring messed up here. But anyway, this is your little QRC code, and everybody has their own individual QRC code assigned.
Nice.
And so instead of doing the tap with the barcodes,
yes,
you'll be doing it with a you'll be doing it with a QRC code.
Yes,
and
the tap. Yeah, well, and all these places are taking that now. And with that, there's also this related question is, will the credential cards be acceptable as passports internationally as well as domestically? And is there any, is that something that we believe is something that we're trying to...
I believe a lot of that stuff is being reworked and rewritten right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what the ultimate outcome is going to be.
Okay.
The problem with using cards as a passport is that there's no way to stamp people into and out of country.
Yes.
So, having some sort of paper documentation similar to the passport papers that we have now is kind of necessary. And unless there's some other development that I'm unaware of, we have yet to develop a passport per se. But there is instruction on the website that has proven to be kind of ironclad over the years, that if you really, really, really need to get back to your country, or you need to get back to another country for some reason, that you can essentially mail yourself across national borders, as long as you're not on a terrorist watch list or something of that nature.
This is an important question. Danny says the Tennessee, he's talking about the Tennessee militia. We were told the complete structure we created was tabled by you. Can we use it now in our private training? It actually helps with participation, which dropped since it was tabled.
I didn't table anything in Tennessee.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. That Tennessee, like all of the assemblies, has to build its militia branch. The problem that we're having in Tennessee and Kentucky is that when people there think about the militia, it always tends to go toward, like an armed resistance idea, and we're at peace. And so, my caution to Kentucky and Tennessee is that the real reason that we have the militia functions in the modern day is in the situation like we have now in Eastern Tennessee. where there's a natural disaster. Or if there were a foreign country, if we were at war and there was a foreign country sending troops into Tennessee, then our militias would be activated to repel that. But, we've had such bad relations with our federal subcontractors and their state-of-state organizations for so many years that there's a tendency for people to try to use the militia for insurrectionist purposes, and that's not why we're here. But, I just want to get that message across to everybody. We're dealing with our subcontractors in an appropriate and business-like way. We're bringing forward our claims and complaints and enforcing against them because we have the proper parties to their contracts. And so we're taking a legal and lawful approach to dealing with our recalcitrant and erring service providers. Instead of going to war with them, we're enforcing our contracts. And so I know people get very, very outraged and frustrated, and well, they might, with many of the things that have gone on and that are going on with our contractors. But we're not here as insurrectionists, and our militias are not for that purpose. Our militias are here to basically serve the public law and enforce the public law, and to be here present to help our people in a situation like we've got in the Southeast right now, where we need to be watching out for each other and helping each other every way we can. So I did not table anything in Tennessee.
Yep. Communication. So if you have a GFG account, I'm pretty confident that they will be getting their prosperity cards, because Missouri's saying they don't have an assembly that's functioning, but they do have an LRO account and they are on GFG. And then the other question was, when will the prosperity cards with QR codes be rolled out? I mean, aren't they letting in like 350 million people still? So like,
yeah. The thing is that you don't have to have a physical card to use your QR code. There's an app that you can get on your phone that allows you to do the same thing, so that you can just pull up your app and use your QR code on the phone. So you don't have to actually have a physical card yet to have use and access to your QR code.
It's going to be on the app, Anna, for the Global Family Group. Is that what you're saying?
There's an app coming out that will allow you to interface your QR code to any vendor, any QR code vendor.
Got it.
And so you'll have more immediate access than just having a physical card like this. But of course, the end line is to have your own card and be able to go into, say, Lowe's or any of the stores that have a QR code reader and just use this like a credit card.
Great. And then can you clarify how we will get the master list of the prosperity credit unions? Will each state be receiving this information?
Everybody who has an account will get that information. Everybody who's in an assembly will have automatic
access. Mm-hmm. So does that include Canada? They're asking also.
Not yet. It will,
okay.
But not yet. Canada has different rules about credit unions, and so that's part of the reason we're calling it a prosperity union, because we don't want people to think of this as a conventional bank or a conventional credit union. This is something new, and so we're trying to bring that forward by calling it a prosperity union.
Mm-hmm.
But it will have to be hammered out with the banking authorities in Canada before it's available in Canada.
One last quick question. What is the proper way to address a credit union to let them know we are dealing with lawful repository funds in a letter? Please.
Well, we've done business with credit unions in this country, and there was never any question. It was just a matter of how you endorse things. Really, the credit unions are no different than the banks in that when you deal with lawful money, especially with the prosperity unions, it just gets credited as an asset-backed money in the trade bank instead of a credit in a credit institution.
This might be a really good article, Anna, and you might have written about this before, but considering that we're walking into this new situation or currently, maybe that might be helpful for folks, because I know there must be so much for you to say, and for us to really be able to grasp it nicely. Your articles are so helpful for us to just be able to reread. So I'm just going to put a request in for that if you have a moment. And then this is the last one, because I know that you have the other podcast to do, and we're trying to be really good with our time. And I'm really excited that we went through so much that we didn't think we were going to get through at all. But Dan wants to know, I've declared through the best of my knowledge, I have not dissolved my state legal marriage. Does that nullify my status? I know others in the same position. And I really hope that the answer is no, because all of us have to fix our marriage situation, myself included. So.
Yeah, think about it as a separate issue. The marriages that the state recognizes are joint ventures, they're business joint ventures. And it has nothing to do with you as a man being married to a woman, okay? It has to do with two companies forming a joint venture and producing products. Children are products in their system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they do all of their funky chicken assertions that they have rights as a silent third party to the joint venture to determine things like the custody of the product and the warehousing of the product. And in the case of a divorce, to end the marriage, then they claim the right to distribute the assets. And so, yeah, that's how they view all of this. They look at us as businesses forming a joint venture, and then they take up an unstated third-party position where they have the controlling interest and can swing that controlling interest however they like toward the mother or the father or whatever. And that's where they get this horrible idea and system that they just can come in and take your kids. So you're better off having a marriage that's a hand fasting and a traditional marriage and doing away with that. But most people have problems because then they won't recognize your right to insure your spouse under a job-related health program. So
the health program, you mean the sickness program? And then also, if you want to participate in the sickness program, then collecting gold coins is cheaper. It's math, not magic. I did it with my husband because my husband wasn't really comfortable with that, and I did the math with him, and he saw that there was no magic. There was no magic to the insurance gambling scam. So
right.
When he realized that we could just collect gold and hold on to it, then he was even more excited. He couldn't believe, what he was losing and all of that. So if everyone, whatever money you spend on your insurance, put it into gold and just hold it, and then pretend like that's your insurance policy, and then use it if you ever have any actual emergency. So
Yeah,
I
well,
think that we did a really good job, Anna, and you're like going a million miles an hour. We appreciate you so much. There's this one question that is about punishment, or where did it go? They
Yeah,
were
it's up there.
clarifying. Okay,
no,
yeah.
we don't have administrative remedy. Administrative remedy is something that they have, that the the de facto corporations have, because they're corporations, and they can come up with whatever policies they want and enforce them on people, but that's not how our government works. So um, no, the only traditional things that affect our members are timeouts, when members are being disorderly and disrupting progress with the business meetings. Um, they can be given a timeout, but those timeouts need to be progressive and they need to be explained at each step. I've gone over this many, many times, and I continue to have to go over it because people who have been trained in this de facto system are constantly trying to jury around and find some basis for some coercive authority over others. And frankly, that does not exist in our system. But what does exist is the right of the body, the assembly, to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. Because think about it, you have all these people here, they're all joined together and for one purpose, which is to build their assembly, right? And then you have some yahoo who wants to talk about something totally off the wall that has nothing to do with building the assembly. And so you have to have some means by which to enforce some sort of decorum and order, to assure that the assembly gets its business done. And that isn't to say that you're here to censor people. It's just a matter of, we have an agenda, we have something we're doing here, and that isn't it. And so what we traditionally have is a marshal at arms or a sergeant at arms on the land, and that person is acting as sort of a moderator, making sure that the meetings are safe and orderly. And so that's the office that normally administers and monitors meetings to make sure that the business is getting done and that there isn't any undue unpleasantness or undue disruption to the meeting. Now, when somebody comes in drunk and disorderly, and we've all had examples of that, and they want to rant and rave about their divorce settlement, which they've been rooked in a divorce settlement in the de facto world, and they want to come over to our assembly and gripe about it, and in the middle of an assembly meeting about a different topic entirely, then the marshal at arms takes them out of the meeting and says, basically, hey, guy, we appreciate that you're passionate about this subject, but it belongs in the litigation committee, not in the General Assembly meeting. And, we're putting you on a timeout for, 3 days or a week or however, to think about this and learn how best to, thread your way through this and get the help you need. Okay, so you're out of here for the night. Go soak your head and feel better in the morning. Okay, so the guy is out of the committee or out of the meeting for 3 days. All right, next week he comes back. He does the same darn thing. All right, the marshal at arms takes him aside and says, hey, guy, this isn't the way to do this. You're supposed to take these sorts of concerns to your litigation committee and, see what other people have learned and what you can benefit from there. This is not the right forum. We have an agenda. This is what we're doing. You're out of here for a week. Go soak your head and feel better in the morning and come back in a week and see if you can behave yourself. All right. This is all very practical. This is just, run-of-the-mill kind of things that go on. And, if he comes back a month later and does the same thing, you go through the same drill and you give him a longer period of time out to get this behavior. So it should, it should be following a progression. That's what we mean by progressive timeout. And each time it happens, you explain exactly what he's done wrong so that he can correct, right?
Yeah.
You don't want the object is not to get rid of people. The object is to educate people and encourage good behavior in public meetings so that the public can get on with its business.
There's so much, from the corporatocracy world, there's so much blame. And so that's the problem. All the corporate minded folks are having to struggle through resetting the mind. And I loved your article about the Armoricans, Anna, and explaining about the armored and the amor, the love, the Armoricans, and how formidable they were and how they were conquering with love. And this is something that we all need to really look into and practice on all of our assemblies. It was really, really beautifully written. I think everyone should read that article over and over and over and over again, and we should just manifest it within our assemblies, because that really is what we all want, is to be able to live in peace and have really good trade relationships. And we don't all have to like each other, but Greg and I know that when we need somebody to hold the other end of the wall so we can square that barn, we don't care who it is. Are you going to drop it? Like, don't drop it. Just help us get the barn squared up, and then you all go on doing what you're going to do, and I'm going to go this way and do what I got to do, and we just get her done. That's what we do.
Right. Well, one of the nice things about the Armorican tradition is that these people are very sincere Christians in a practical sense, not a dogmatic sense. So that
which is a spiritual thing. It's not the corporatocracy's.
It's not dogma.
Right.
It's not doctrine. It's just the practical matter of treating your trading partners right.
And there's a tie to the Cathars too, wasn't there, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, it was part of, actually, from India, Niti. This was a migration of people from India all across Eastern Europe, and it came like a wave, and the edge of the wave ended in Western France.
Wow.
And so they were a people that has deep ties to India, and a very more meditative and philosophical take on the Christian faith that they picked up as they went across Europe. And so, yeah, that's why they were so different. And that's why the Cathars were attacked. They were not only different philosophically, varied away from the traditional Roman Church interpretation of everything, but they were also ethnically and genetically different than the people around them. I mean, over many, many centuries, they've, dispersed into the population and everything. But yeah, it's a fascinating history. And the Americans have always been very good traders. They have they're quiet. You don't hear much about them because they don't get into controversy. They work on a mutually beneficial idea. So,
imagine that, where everybody wins. Like if everybody's not winning, everybody's losing. That's what they don't really seem to comprehend. If everybody's not winning, everybody's losing. And with that, Anna, I'm trying to keep you on time, and we love you so much. And we will see you next Tuesday. And everybody should get ready for the next podcast, which I'm assuming is all happening. And it'll be all about the 4 pillars.
Getting your organization going for your assemblies. So the questions about, those sorts of organizational questions, please come on to the next around the next podcast, which will be devoted entirely to that. And this one is more about business and international things and current questions. Okay, so we'll be running the America's Home Assembly Required podcast on Tuesdays right after this one.
Perfect. Yay. Thank you so much. And all of you guys, fans of Lisa, that's who's doing that with Anna. So go check it out. And Anna, we will see you next Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.